Okay, so now with the reserve, the people were forced to live there, and after World War I, there was roughly about 300 pagans left. Today we have about 3,600, but back then there was about 300. But around the turn of the century, there was people that came in from the Utah area and that settled on the south end of the Blood Reserve. And they established a town by the name of Carson later in McGrath. And the area that they came from was really arid in Utah. And what they brought to the area was irrigation technology. And they soon were brought in, more of them were brought in, and they developed the whole irrigation complex in southern Alberta. And today southern Alberta is the food growing area of Alberta through beef production and other grain crops. But in 1922, there was a cooperative of farmers called Lethbridge Northern Irrigation District, who were kind of just north of the city of Lethbridge. And what they were building, they were developing an irrigation system, and their water conveyance system, they needed land. That was on our reserve, the Pagan Indian Reserve. It's on the east end of our reserve. And when you look at the topography, the elevation, where our reserve lays and where the area is down here where the water users are, it's higher. So you got that gravitational flow. So it is only, that was the best thing was just go build your headworks over on those Indians' land. And at the same time, there was 300 of us, and they thought we were going to die out. They were going to either move us to the Blood Reserve, or they were going to move us to the Tsutina out here. And they built their irrigation system. And what happened was in 1976, the management of LNID was transferred to the province. And my grandfather was a researcher during the time, and he brought to the chief and council, he said, well, those lands down there, they were never surrendered. That was an illegal land surrender, and we need to argue that point. So what happened, they notified the Alberta government. The Alberta government said, no, we're legally there. The chief and council at the time the chief was Nelson Smallake Sr. And what he done with the recommendation from the research people is they went down there and they blockaded that headworks in the time when they needed the water the most. And the province brought in the RCMP, and there was a little bit of a confrontation. But at the end of the day, the people agreed. Right. Okay, the people agreed to a lease, and then so in '81, the nation signed a lease permit with Alberta, and they gave us some money for the lease arrangement. But in 1986, this was in 81 was the permit, 78 was the blockade, 81 was the permit. In 86, the nation looked at the issue and they said, well, it's not about, well, part of the argument is, yeah, they're on our reserve, but the bigger issue is they need water that's on our land. So we launched a water rights case in 1986. But during that time, the nation brought in Tom Berger. And Tom Berger worked on the original case, which argued a broader area. That was called the Big Reserve case. It was a court case against the federal government based on the treaty. But Berger told the chief and council, he said, well, you need to learn how to walk before you learn how to run. So the nation put the bigger case into abeyances, and they pursued a smaller reserve case, which is the river on our Indian reserve lands, against the province. It took 12 years, from 1986 to 1998, of discoveries and proceedings and hearings, and finally we got a court date. But in 1998, Ralph Klein flew down to the reserve and signed off a protocol agreement with some members of the chief and council, and what essentially our leadership at that point done was they put that argument into abeyances. And they went into a negotiation that took 4 years. And Canada and Alberta spent a lot of money for research and negotiation, and they gave the leadership at the time who went and took the agreement and they started pushing it with our community. And because our community is an oppressed community, you know, we're impoverished, we don't understand the issues around us. We don't understand that just east of where all this water goes, it feeds an irrigation system that has feedlots that have over 600 head of animal. There's more cattle in that region than there is people in southern Alberta, in our area anyway, excluding the city of Calgary. So this is a big multi-billion-dollar thing on water management. And so essentially what happened was the people who wanted to undermine our water rights case won in the end, and we voted, and I voted no on both occasions, but we lost. And essentially what that said was, it says where society is, and I say society because, well, it was the Alberta government and it was the federal government, but you know, those are manifestations of society, social contract. It's where society thinks, what's their perception of where we are? You know, do they really want the Indian to sit at the table and to benefit? When we argue with non-native people out there, when we start going in that direction, they start saying, oh, gee whizzes, is this what this is about, a piece of the pie? And my reaction to that is, yeah, it's about a piece of the pie. Go back to the original treaty agreement, and it's better to having a piece of the pie than comes from the table, while society benefits. And so on that point there, you know, the struggle goes on. And for my presentation here, it's only a perspective. And it's only something, a perspective from a person that comes from a group of people that are at the periphery of the social, economic, and political systems in this country today. So at that point there, I think I'm 1 minute, 2 minutes finished.
If you want to have time for a couple questions.
Okay, sure, okay, yeah. So I guess I'll just close it with that. Thank you.